Hey everybody, this video is going to be about the rabbit hole I went down when exploring track stacks. Now, some of you may remember, if you've been watching all my videos, that someone asked about stacks and folders, embedding them inside each other. It was in a recent live stream, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go mess with that because I've used track stacks in a pretty limited way overall. And certainly what I discovered next was a huge surprise to me. So let me just walk you through exactly what we have here. I've got, for instance, 4 vocal tracks, and perhaps I want to always, work on the harmony parts together. I'm going to select them both, right click, create a track stack. Now we have 2 types of stacks. We have a basic track stack that lets you mute, solo, control volume from the main stack. It's just an organizational thing. And then we have a summing stack, and this is more of a multi-purpose track stack that mixes its subtracks and can be saved as a patch. This type can also record and play back MIDI or remote control recording on audio-only subtracks. Select this option to both organize and submix the track. So I want to do that one for this. And we'll call this the Harmony Vox, right? Cool. And I can open and close this. I can put effects that will affect both of these on here. When it's open, it shows you that out here in your main part of the window in the track area. And so it's pretty cool, right? I can come through here. Now, I've got 2 bass things happening right now. But one of them is really not what I'm going to be using. I just want to keep organized in here. So I'm going to do a folder stack for this one. And I'll just do bass ideas. Okay. And then I've got these 3 other supporting parts. These are kind of like everything else in the mix. Besides the drums, the main keys, and the bass, this is like all the other instruments. And I do think that every once in a while I'm going to maybe want to squash them all together, like with a limiter or something. And so I'm going to put other instruments. Right? Cool. And you can actually, I think, change the icon on these if you want to as well. You don't have to use those, but that's the default icon, and so I'm going to be certainly more familiar with what's there. Then we have our lead vocal parts. There's one for the main and then one for the bridge. I'm going to do a track stack here. We'll do a summing in case I want to put something on both of them. And we'll just put Vox for this. And then, let's see, I've got 2 keyboard parts. See, this is a way of keeping organized, right? And then, do I need one for the drums? Not really, because it's just one track. So I could come through here, option click, all on one arrow. I'm just going to close all of my track stacks. So now I've got a much more condensed mix. You can see on areas of the track where there's 2 things in there, like this, where there's bass 1 and bass 2, that they show up like this now, which is a combined region. And then when there's just one thing, it still shows that one thing. Down below, that's continuous, so it all shows up through there. So pretty handy how this works, right? You get to organize things. Well, if I wanted to do a track stack with both of my other track stacks in there, you'll see I can't do it. I can't create a new track stack out of other track stacks. I don't think we can do that with any of the ones that are open right now. Yeah, okay, cool. But say, I want to do one that's like a rhythm thing. Like maybe I want to make a track stack out of the rhythm section, which would be drums, bass, and maybe the keys part. But let's do create a track stack just around the drummer. And in this one, I'm still going to do a summing stack like that. And we'll call this the rhythm stack, right? So let me show you something here that we can do. I'm going to open up the bass ideas, and I'm going to open up, my just harmony vocals for a second. The bass ideas is a folder stack, and this one is the summing stack. And let's drag this up into the bass ideas. So now bass ideas folders has a summing stack inside of it. And so now I can open up that one as a substack, or I can close it. Now I have done this a few different ways because it doesn't always work reliably. This is kind of the mess of the whole thing. Let's do our other instruments up in here into the rhythm one. So that folder now has the sub like that. And I don't think I can pull the folder into anything else, but we can pull the summing stacks into the folders. So let's do this Vox up into here as well. So now I've got this summing stack with the other instruments, and inside of that one, we have the main vocal one. So now I've got one folder with two summing and also just a random track all by itself. So let's see. Now I've got the folder track with a drummer and a sum, and inside the summing one, I've got a folder and a summing one, and inside that folder, I have a summing one. So now it's like I've got 4 or 5 different layers here of things going on, and let's pull this last one in someplace. So now I've got one folder called sub2, and inside that one I've got one summing one and the drums, and inside that summing one I've got 3 tracks, 2 other summing ones, and a folder, and inside that folder I've got one summing one with 4 different tracks inside of it. And all of that now is inside one main thing. So you can create fairly complex things with this. And I think that that's kind of really cool that you can do that. However, there's one other part to this that I think is worth looking at. So I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to pull these two out of everything. And I want to create a new stack just around those two. Summing stack, of course. And let's close them. Now I've got these regions that have 2 audio files inside them. And one thing that I was curious about was the processing, the selection-based processing. And so I can select that region, open up some processing for this. Let's do let's do pitch shifter. And let's just pull it down. 100% mix. Okay, so this is on our processor. We're going to apply it, and we'll close that down. And so let's just play the beginning of this. That's when we begin to see the truth. And it actually didn't work right. That's when we But when you do that, it mutes part of, it didn't mute, that was just the solo thing happening here. But it screws up your folders. It screws up the track stacks. And it tries to. I've had this do it differently in different ways. So selection-based processing. It shouldn't even allow us to do this at all. That's the real truth. That's when we begin.
That's when we begin.
So it is previewing it. We're going to apply. That's when we begin to. And so it lets you do it. But then when I open this up, it has added a new track. That's when we begin to lose our youth. And so what it's doing, that's when we, it's just doing it to the top one of the regions inside the stack. But it added these other tracks in here, which I don't fully, I mean, the whole thing is just a little bit of a mess. Either it should work and you should be able to process it, or it shouldn't work and it should tell you that, but it's doing something really bizarre when it tries to do it. And so I need to undo all of that work just to make sure I don't accidentally ruin a project here. That's when we begin to... And it's it may already be ruined because that's not how it originally sounded at all. Let's just undo this back into the other place. That's when we begin to lose our youth. Okay, a little bit better. That mix is not done, but you get the idea. So now we have all of these different things happening inside one of the stacks, and we can continue to move them down. Now, here's the other thing that becomes an issue. I'm going to solo out the top folder. That's when we begin to lose our youth. And I'm not, I'm sure there's some logic to this. I have never been able to find it yet. Maybe it's because it's too much like the Matrix. That's when we... But I can't always figure out. That's when we... Each of the sub ones I can figure out. Let's do this one. That's when we... But I just soloed this one stack here, which has all of that stuff in there. That's when we begin to lose. But it's not soloing the next level in of the folders. And so soloing things when you do this is pretty wonky. And I mean, it's like I solo one thing and it's like nothing that I solo above here lets the drums actually play, even though they're oftentimes in the right place. That's when we... The top folder can't, but then it mutes the harmony parts. Okay, let's make a verdict on how well this particular thing works. It doesn't. If you want to use track stacks, I recommend you stick to just doing them out in the main place and not necessarily trying to do this hierarchy of things that are looped or bound together or put together in different ways. It's not worth it. I don't think that the payoff is good enough for it. But you can see it lets us try to do all of this stuff. And so I think that that's really interesting. The one thing we haven't looked at, besides the track stacks, would be the actual packing of the folders. There's our folder up here. Let's see, let's move that over. That's when we begin to see the truth. And inside the folder view, this is the feature that predated the actual track stacks. We can put things in there and work on them. Let's undo that for a second, because most of the time, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it on all of like the things of one type. So let's pack a folder. That's when we begin. And we can mute it, but we can't solo it or do anything else with it. And it's interesting because these are still here. They still are attached to those tracks to get out of this view right here. You can double click in the empty space, or there's a little arrow at the top that we can go back up a level. It's like they're still part of this whole thing right here. So they're up there in the folder, but they're still going out those tracks right there. So let's do something like, not that, just hit the wrong key command. Let's do this, and we'll select two different things, and we're going to pack a folder. And now we're in a new folder. That's when we begin. And inside that folder, we have those two things. And so inside here, you can see we have the other folder that's there. And we can come through and pack those into a folder. So now we've got that folder. So we have few different levels of folders, and it gets insane. I don't use the program like this. I'm sure some of you find this feature extremely useful, but I personally don't necessarily find that level of, reorganization super useful. But you can continue to do this. I mean, we can continue to put things in here, and there we have it. Why would we want to do this sometimes? I mean, organization is certainly one thing. Making things really confusing if you're, collaborating with somebody and they need to find all your files, but they can't do it because you've just created an insane folder packed situation. There's just, I do think that there are some potentials here because we can cut this up and move things around. So in the old days, I would use this like an arrangement track, like we do now with the new arrangement track, and I would, move all that stuff together and work on a verse in one folder and a chorus in one folder. Other times, if you have a bunch of sound effects that you're building up, say you're doing a little bit of post-production or sound design, you can put all the explosions having to do with one visual event into a folder so that you can easily do that. And then mute them all together or whatever you want, but they still have individual tracks and processing and things on them. But you can see it gets a little bit crazy, and we haven't even, started looking at moving the folders into our track stacks, which does work. If you're more confused now than when I started this video, I wouldn't blame you if you're like, yes, I needed to know that you're weird. And if you're somehow just like giddy that logic can do this and you didn't realize it, then I think you might need to, take a break from staring at a computer screen and go outside and breathe some fresh air. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, this look at this amazing complex spider web of organizational tools. We didn't even look at packing into take folders or flattening the stacks. We just looked at the crazy parts and not the actual other useful things. Have a good week.